Chapter 8. Candy Jane and Professor Boogle. Little Candy Jane was a very curious little girl of 11. She always got into scrapes and could not stay out of trouble. She loved to ask questions and asked them so often that everyone got tired of her. Candy Jane had an old neighbor who was a gardener, but everyone called him Professor Boogle because he loved to read. He was the only person who could answer all of Candy Jane's questions. One day, Candy Jane's father said to her, "Candy Jane, you are a Pandora's box. I never know what you are going to do next." Curious, Candy Jane looked up at her father and said,
"But father, I am neither Pandora nor a box."
Her father roared. Confused, Candy Jane ran out to see Professor Boogle, who was reading in the garden.
Professor Boogle, tell me, who is a Pandora's box? My father called me a Pandora's box.
The professor looked at Candy Jane and smiled. "Child, it is not who, but what. Come and sit while I tell you a story. Many centuries ago, the Greeks believed in gods who were like men but very strong. They could change themselves into anything, mortal men, animals, plants or monsters," said Professor Boogle. "Their greatest god was Zeus. He was very angry with mortals because they used fire. Fire was stolen from Zeus by another god called Prometheus. Zeus ordered the creation of the first woman from clay. Her name was Pandora, and she was sent to the earth." Candy Jane eagerly looked at the professor. Pandora was given a box. She was told never to open it. Now, Pandora was given many good qualities along with curiosity. In fact, she was as curious as you are. She was so inquisitive about the box that she opened it. Out of the box came all the evil in the world. It is said that at the bottom of the box only hope remained. So Pandora's box means to invite trouble, Candy Jane, finished Professor Boogle.
"So why did my father call me a Pandora's box?"
asked Candy Jane. "Well, see here, little girl, you are always asking questions. You are also very curious about things, and this gets you into all kinds of trouble. Candy Jane, you can get into trouble even when you are eating. So your parents and everyone else never knows what is going to happen next. That is why your father called you a Pandora's box," said Professor Boogle.
Now I understand. Are there more stories like these? Tell me some more, please, Professor.
Begged Candy Jane. "I'll tell you one more, and others you will have to find on your own," said the professor. Long ago, Midas was the king of Pessinus. He asked one companion of Dionysus, a god, to grant him the gift of turning whatever he touched into gold. Midas was granted his wish. So everything that King Midas touched, food, water, and flowers, turned into gold. He could not even eat food. Then one day his daughter touched him, and he was gloomy. Guess what happened?
"She turned into gold,"
said Candy Jane to the smiling professor. Now, a person who is always lucky is said to have the Midas touch, explained Professor Boogle.
"But Professor, what happened to the daughter?"
asked Candy Jane. After Midas's daughter was turned into gold, he hated the power that he had asked for. He prayed to Dionysus, who told Midas to wash himself in river Pactolus. When King Midas did so, his power washed away and flowed into the river, and everything that Midas had turned into gold took its old form, finished the professor. Suddenly Candy Jane started clapping and laughing. "What is so funny, little one?" quizzed Professor Boogle.
Oh, Professor, so the story of King Midas also tells us it is bad to want more things than we really need. These old stories are so useful for our everyday situations,
exclaimed Candy Jane. Smiling, Professor Boogle replied, "Yes, they are. Myths are stories about the past. Sometimes they tell stories of the heroes of a culture, and sometimes they are about imaginary people or creatures. Through these stories, we learn about the rules of the society and also the way they lived. Every culture has its own mythology."
That is so wonderful. I want to know more,
said the excited Candy Jane. "Candy Jane, you go to the library and find out what Achilles' heel, Herculean effort, and hot as Hades means." Candy Jane found Greek mythology so interesting that she went to the library to find the answers.